You can tell a lot about someone's childhood by how their body reacts to small things. A door opening, a name being called, a sudden change in tone. For some, it means nothing. For others, it means prepare yourself. In 1919, Franz Kafka sat down and wrote a 47-page letter to his father, one he never sent. He described a man who was physically large, loud, successful, and completely terrifying to his son. Not because he beat him, but because nothing Kafka did was ever quite right. He once wrote that his entire body of work was, in some way, an attempt to express what he could never say to his father. This letter remains one of the rawest accounts of what it feels like to grow up under a hard father. And Kafka never gave it to him. He became one of the greatest writers who ever lived, yet spent most of his life trying to earn the approval of one man who never gave it. Long before psychology explained it, stories had already shown us something powerful. A father doesn't just raise a child, he shapes the voice inside their head. Fyodor Dostoevsky explored this idea in his own way. He told stories of sons raised under fathers who offered no warmth, no stability, no sense of safety. And yet, even in their absence, those fathers never really left. Their presence followed, in decisions, in fears, in the way those sons saw themselves. Because a father doesn't just raise a child, he becomes the voice they carry for the rest of their life. One of Dostoevsky's most powerful characters, Ivan, grows up brilliant, but emotionally distant. He doesn't become violent, he becomes detached. He builds a wall of intellect so high that nothing, not love, not faith, not even other people, can reach him. Dostoevsky wrote that character over 150 years ago. But if you look around today, you probably know someone like Ivan. Maybe you are one. Someone who learned early on that depending on a father was risky, so you stopped depending on anyone. Today, we're going to understand where that comes from and what it costs. We're talking about the psychology of the hard father. Not just the one who says no, but the one whose presence continues to shape your mind long after he leaves the room. We'll look at where this behavior comes from, what it does to a child's brain and body, and most importantly, what healing from it actually looks like. We often see a disciplined, well-behaved child and assume it's a success story. But psychology lets us look deeper, and what's underneath isn't always what it seems. Psychologist Diana Baumrind described this as the authoritarian parenting style, a world built on control, rules, and very little emotional warmth. Children are seen, but not heard. Obedience becomes the only measure of success. Emotions are ignored or punished. And her research consistently found something important. These children often appear well-behaved on the outside, but struggle deeply on the inside. But before we talk about the impact on the child, we need to ask a question most people never consider. Why does a father become this way in the first place? Because the answer changes everything. Here's something that might surprise you. Most strict fathers aren't cruel by nature. They aren't controlling because they enjoy it. In many cases, they're controlling because they're afraid. For fathers who grew up in unstable environments, poverty, danger, unpredictability, strictness wasn't cruelty. It was survival, a strategy, a flawed one, but often well-intentioned. If a father spent his childhood fighting for safety, he may believe emotional warmth is a luxury. In his mind, a tough, obedient child is a child the world can't break. So he passes down the only model he knows, the one that shaped him. This creates something psychologists describe as an anxiety control loop. Imagine his mind like a smoke detector, but one that goes off at the smallest sign of change. To you, a messy room or a different opinion felt normal. To him, it felt like something was going wrong. And because he didn't know how to calm that internal anxiety, he tried to control the external world. And the easiest thing to control was you. When you followed the rules, he felt calm. When you didn't, his system reacted. Not necessarily because you did something wrong, but because something inside him felt out of control. He wasn't just reacting to you. He was reacting to his own fear. You just happened to be there. So where does that fear come from? Part of the answer lies in intergenerational patterns. Trauma doesn't just disappear. It gets passed down through behavior, beliefs, and emotional patterns. Your father may have been shaped by fear long before you were born. Not just psychologically, but in the way he learned to see the world. In many ways, he's running an old operating system, installed by his own parents. And because he turned out fine, he assumes it must be the right way. The only way. So he wasn't just raising you. He was trying, without realizing it, to manage the child he once was.
Not all strict fathers look the same. In his work, The Father Factor, Dr. Stephan Polter describes different types. One is the superachiever father, a man who believes his value comes from what he produces, his success, his status, his results, and he passes that belief on to his child. Love becomes something you earn through performance, grades, achievement. Another type is the time bomb father. Unpredictable, sometimes calm, sometimes explosive. And living in that uncertainty teaches a child something painful, that safety is fragile, that love can disappear at any moment. Both types often fall into what's called an ego-mirror dynamic. The child stops being seen as a person and becomes a reflection of the father. Your achievements become his identity. Your failures become his shame. That's a heavy thing to carry, especially when you don't even realize you're carrying it. And over time, this doesn't just shape behavior, it shapes the brain. In The Body Keeps the Score, Bessel van der Kolk explains that trauma isn't just psychological, it gets stored in the body. For a child in a strict home, the brain's threat system becomes hyperactive, always scanning, always preparing, even when nothing is wrong. This is called hypervigilance. And it doesn't just disappear when you grow up. You might still feel tense when someone raises their voice. You might hesitate to speak freely. You might struggle to make decisions without approval. Psychologists sometimes call this a kind of permission prison. Not because you're weak, but because your nervous system was trained that way. Many children also develop what's known as the fawn response. Instead of fighting or escaping, you adapt. You become agreeable. You stay quiet. You shape yourself into whatever keeps the peace. Safer, but less real. And even when the father is no longer there, his voice often is. Over time, that voice becomes internal. Psychologist Lindsay Gibson calls this the harsh inner critic, a mental recording of criticism, pressure, and impossible standards, playing on repeat. And eventually, it stops sounding like him. It starts sounding like you. I'm not good enough. I'll mess this up. I don't deserve this. But that's not your voice. It's an old recording. So what do you do with all of this? The first step might be the most important. Stop taking it personally. This was never really about you.
It was about a system your father was stuck in. Instead of waiting for him to change, you begin to see him clearly. Not as the father you needed, but as the person he actually is. And for many people, that realization brings something unexpected: freedom. One powerful healing practice is writing a letter you never send. You say everything: the anger, the grief, the unanswered questions. Not for him, for you. Because healing doesn't always require a response. Sometimes it requires release. And slowly, you begin to build something new. Your own voice, your own identity, your own way of being. Carl Jung once described the ideal father as a source of structure, guidance, and safety. But when fear takes over, that role becomes controlling, rigid, even destructive. So here's a question worth asking. When your child thinks of you, do they feel your support or your pressure? Real strength isn't control. It's presence. And here's the most important part. Your brain can change at any age.
This is called neuroplasticity, the ability to build new patterns, new responses, new ways of being. Every time you speak honestly, every time you make a decision without fear, every time you allow yourself to exist as you are rewiring your mind. Some days will feel easy. Others will take you back to that younger version of yourself. Both are part of the process. You didn't choose how you were raised, but you can choose what comes next. You are not your father's fear. You are not his past. You are not his expectations. You are the one who breaks the pattern. And that is not a small thing. If this helped you understand something you've been carrying, share it with someone who might need it too. I'll see you in the next one.